Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Larry Finkelberg. I am a partner of a business right here in Rockville, and I also chair the Rockville Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber's vision is a thriving Rockville, and we are the voice of business in our city. We work to ensure that Rockville is both a great place to live and to do business. I just want to quickly mention a few things the Chamber does for its members and for the community. We host monthly educational and social events so that our businesses can connect and network so they can thrive and grow. We have 2 CEO roundtables where business owners have the opportunity to share best practices and challenges they have together in a confidential and facilitated setting. We have a corporate volunteer committee that works closely with nonprofits to make it easier for our businesses to give back to the community. And our chamber also runs the Rockville Rewards program. If you're interested in learning more, we welcome you to an attend event or to visit our website. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce the moderator for this evening's mayoral debate. He is the former Rockville City Manager and the former Chief Administrative Officer for Montgomery County. He currently serves on the board of the Rockville Chamber of Commerce. Please help me welcome Mr. Bruce Romer.
Good evening and welcome to the City of Rockville election debate sponsored by the Rockville Chamber of Commerce. The Rockville Chamber of Commerce is the nonpartisan voice of the business community. We are committed to good government, economic vitality, and a high quality of life for all. Tonight's debate is for educational purposes. The Chamber does not endorse candidates. Before we introduce the candidates, I'd like to welcome our studio audience and all those who are watching on tonight's program on Montgomery Community Media. And we want to thank our sponsors of tonight's program. They are Amerihome Lending, the Beanbag Deli and Catering, Gilly's Craft Beer and Fine Wine, and the law firm of Shulman, Rogers, Gandal, Pordy, and Ecker. We applaud all the candidates for their interest in public service and their willingness to serve our community in these important leadership positions. To begin, we will hear from our 2 candidates for Mayor of Rockville. Each candidate will make a 2-minute opening statement. The order was determined earlier by a coin toss. Then, each candidate will be asked a question and have 2 minutes to answer, alternating who is first, and the other candidate then will have 1 minute to respond. At the end of the program, each candidate will be invited to make a closing statement of no more than 2 minutes, and will observe the same order as in the opening statements. Our official timer, Steve Edwards, in the front row, will let you all know when your time limit is approaching. Tonight's questions have been submitted by members of the Rockville Chamber of Commerce. The candidates have not seen the questions in advance. Now, we ask that the studio audience refrain from applause during the debate, except for now, when we welcome the candidates for mayor, Bridget Newton and Mark Pierzchala. Mark Pierzchala, you have the first opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Romer. I would like to greet everybody here. I'd like to thank the Rockville Chamber of Commerce for hosting and for Bruce Romer for moderating. I am a businessman in the city of Rockville. This was forced on me about 3 years ago when I lost my day job 8 hours before my first mayor and council meeting. But I did start a business in January 2010. I immediately joined the Rockville Chamber of Commerce. I am also, as a council member, a member of the Rockville Economic Development Incorporated. I'm actually a board member, and in that way I also support business for Rockville, attracting business in Rockville, maintaining businesses in Rockville, and starting up businesses. And in that, I also strongly support the Women's Business Center, which has now attained a Small Business Administration certification. But I want to talk about the summit process that we undertook as a city in 2011 and 2012. And this was a summit process where we had residents and businesses and nonprofits and educational institutions and government. And the reason we did the summit process, talking about the city's future, talking about how to handle growth, talking about how to thrive in hard economic times was because we wanted to bring everybody together. And I am very appreciative for the many business people who did participate along with the residents and others. But we need to think about businesses, how Rockville can support businesses better than it does, the city government, for example, but also about how businesses can contribute better to Rockville. So I very much look forward to the debate. I'll say that on the council, I consider the whole city all the time, but I am very fair to businesses when they come up and make sure they get a fair hearing, and that's not always been done. So I look forward to the debate with Councilmember Newton, and thank you very much for hosting us.
Bridget Newton, your opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you all for being here. Thank you to the Chamber for hosting and Mr. Romer for moderating. And thank you to Congress for finally reopening our federal government. I thought I'd tell you a little something about me that you may not know, and that is my business experience. Out of college, I worked on the Hill and then joined an 8A firm managing government contracts. When our first child was born, I continued to work, taking him with me to DC 6 days a week for 13 months. In 1988, my husband went out on his own, leaving a great job to start a turnaround management company, As every spouse of a business owner knows, I've lived and breathed every aspect of his business. That was a risk. Then several years later, he went on to borrow money, risking nearly everything we had, including our home, and started a new small business that created 200 jobs. Business is important to the prosperity of our community. I know it, and I've lived it. I'd like to share a few thoughts on the much acclaimed business decision that still appears to be the topic of much discussion. Choice Hotels is a great company. I'm glad they've decided to relocate to Rockville. My decision wasn't about choice. It was about whether we could afford, as a municipality, to be in the game of handing out large incentives to private companies. I wanted to keep negotiating and try to lure them with more non-cash incentives, maybe memberships to our swim center. Rockville invested over $40 million in our town center. I'm sure you as business owners know that the value of delivering for your stakeholders. We can't afford to hand out money to everybody who wants some. The property is across from a metro stop. Not too much of that around anymore. Has a parcel where they can showcase a new hotel only steps away. Not too much of that around either. It's owned by a premier builder, and I always knew it would be a flagship operation. We don't need to throw in $1.7 million in taxpayer monies to an $8 billion publicly traded company with access to the capital markets. What precedent does this set for the next business in Rockville? What about the small businesses? How much could we have done with that? I'd like to explore that idea. We have an economic development group. Let's give them something to work with. Let's start working with our business community better. Thank you.
Okay, let's start with the questions again. 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes to answer and 1 minute to respond. First question is to Mark Pierzchala. It's ever more apparent that legislative bodies need to work together collaboratively to solve local, state, and national challenges. As mayor, what will be your leadership style to work with the council members in addressing the city's challenges?
Thank you very much for that question. Actually, on my website, if you go up to the platform tab and pull down, there's a link to a document. It's a 4-page document about how I'd go about being a mayor. And certainly one of the biggest items on that 4-page document is the relationships with the council members. And for example, I would hold regular meetings, scheduled meetings with each council member. Could be weekly, could be bi-weekly, depending on the council member. If a council member has an initiative, even one I don't agree with, I will work with that council member to best present it. 2 big questions on an initiative: what do you want and why do you want it? And once you get those answered, then you can go on. Certainly during the meetings themselves, there's a whole lot the mayor can do to facilitate the discussion, to make sure everyone has the chance to chime in to the length of time they need it. Mayor can be asking clarifying questions. Mayor should also be asking the council members to help out with relationships with the county council and with the county executive and with our District 17 delegation. There's a whole lot that the mayor and council can do together. We will, once we are elected, form a vision for Rockville, and in that vision we would certainly discuss how we would work together, but we would also discuss how we would work with the broader community, including the nonprofits, including the businesses, including other governments, but especially the residents. We would cover all that. So I think there's a whole lot that can be done for the mayor to facilitate working together. I think we also need to be very cognizant of how we work with city staff. That's not always gone smoothly lately, and I think the city staff bring a wealth of institutional knowledge, a wealth of technical information, and the mayor and council do the policy, city staff do the execution, and I think that's where we need to be. Thank you very much.
Bridget Newton, response, 1 minute.
Sure. I think my 4 years on the council showed just how well I do collaborate. And you can go to my website and see it as well. But I have been responsible for the founding of the Rockville Youth Commission, the Rockville Communications Task Force, and the Financial Advisory Board. I'm the liaison to the Senior Commission. I think they'll tell you also. I work very well with people. I love listening to their ideas, and I love joining in on the idea process. I think as a mayor, the mayor sets the tone of the meetings, and the mayor is the leader. We've had a problem with respect for that position, I think, and I think that would be something that I'd work towards. I agree with weekly meetings. It's something I would implement. I would also do more to work with the city manager to make sure that the mayor and the city manager are the heads of the city, with the senior staff and the council following along. If we work as a team, it'll be better for everybody, and that's the way I've always done things. Thank you.
Question for Bridget Newton. Last year, an independent consultant concluded that the city's employee pension plan is underfunded by over $20 million. What steps have been taken to reduce this liability? What else needs to be done?
Well, steps that have been taken, I believe our retirement board is looking at it. I think they have a proposal coming forward. Some of the ideas that have been discussed are implementing the SEP, the Supplemental Employee Contribution. Whether or not that is adopted by the mayor and council is yet to be seen, but I think we are aware of the issue. We are working towards finding a solution that doesn't put the balance of it on the backs of our taxpayers.
Mark Pierzchala?
Yes, I am a member of the city's retirement board, and I've been in that position for 4 years, and we have worked very hard to address the problem of the city's pension balance. And remember that this all came about, city was almost fully funded before the Great Recession, but our retirement fund took a big hit. As far as the city contribution, we used to contribute $1.7 million a year to the retirement fund. Now we're contributing about $4.2 million to make up that shortfall. We've made up an awful lot of that shortfall. We're going to pay about another $1 million pretty soon to get even better. But the fund is improving. It's improving an awful lot. The retirement board has investigated its mix of investments. It's aligned things correctly. The things that'll come before us in a week or so really don't have to do with the investments themselves. They have to do with the governance of the retirement board, which needs to be taken into account. But I think we're well on our way to achieving what we need to do, but it's not going to be an overnight process.
Question for Mark Pierzchala. The White Flint development on the city's southern border will have a major impact on the city. What steps should the city take in the coming months and years to assure a smooth transition?
Well, there's a couple issues, or more than a couple, with the White Flint plan, but a couple that come to mind immediately are increased traffic, increased density just south of us, but also it's a great commercial center that's being planned, and so we have to react to that somehow. We have one of the counties, one of the state's busiest commercial strips, Rockville Pike, for about 2 miles. And it brings in a lot of money to the state, a lot of money to the county, and some to the city. And we have to position Rockville Pike especially to be able to compete with what's coming from the south. This is why we have the Rockville Pike plan. The transit portion of the Rockville Pike plan I like a lot. That rapid transit that is planned up and down the middle, I hope that goes forward. Rockville should be promoting that. That's going to help take care of the traffic. Getting buses off of the 3 main route lanes going each way, having full access lanes on either side, having pedestrian and bike paths, all is going to help the throughput. So I think there are things we can do, but the Rockville Pike plan to implement the transit portion alone is well over $100 million. It's approaching $200 million. That's going to take state and federal contributions, but we need to get that in everybody's thought process and get it going. Otherwise, we're just going to be swamped.
Bridget Newton?
Thank you. I do have concerns about the BRT, as I've mentioned before. That's the bus rapid transit. With 2 stops in Rockville, I don't think it's going to work very well, and I've suggested that we implement a trolley and work with the county and Gaithersburg on that. I'm not talking about an overhead trolley, but a bus that looks like a trolley. If you want people to get out of their cars, you have to make it available for them to do, easy for them to do. A trolley will do that. The other thing is a BRT isn't going to be funded for many, many years. We need something more immediately. We also have to worry about property rights of the owners along the pike. I think we need to work more closely with those who own the properties there and figure out what we're doing, if what we're doing in our Rockville Pike plan meets their needs and goals as well. So I look forward to a more collaborative effort going forward.
Bridget Newton, do you consider that the city of Rockville is perceived as business friendly? If yes, why is that so? If not, what would you do as mayor to correct that impression?
Well, I think that's a loaded question, and it probably depends on who you ask. I have learned quite a bit in my 4 years as a council member that the city is a challenge to work with. We have made some small steps with our permitting and our processes, but we can do more, and we're working on doing more. I'll tell you a quick story about bringing Dawson's Market here. Shortly after the election in 2009, I suggested to Mayor Marcuccio that she and I go meet with Don Riggs of Fritt and see what the problem was. We learned a great deal about the unfriendliness and what was going on, and we made strides within the city and made some changes, and about 2.5 years later we have Dawson's Market. So I am willing to work with everybody to make sure that what we need in Rockville is what we get, and to work with developers and business owners to see that the services and requirements, the permitting process in Rockville is working for you. So,
Mark Pierzchala?
Well, I agree in great scope with what Councilmember Newton has said. Certainly we need to be better with our review processes and our permitting processes, our inspections, and we have taken steps that the city is looking to streamline those processes. As whether Rockville itself as a city is friendly to business or not, you get mixed reviews, but it is certainly a great place to do business. We have, for example, the 3 metro stations. We have great communication with I-270, 355, and other crossroads. We have such a nucleus of business here that the business people can get what they need primarily within the city, usually. I think Rockville is a great place to do business. It can be a better place to do business. As far as attractions, we don't really attract a lot of businesses in the forms of incentives. In our 4 years, we've done 4 attractions. We don't make a practice of it. We do it for strategic reasons, and that's it.
Thank you. Question for Mark Pierzchala. On the November 5th ballot, there are 3 advisory referendum questions about the city's governmental structure: increasing the elected officials' terms of office to 4 years, holding elections every 4 years, and increasing the number of council members to 6. If you had to select one of these 3 questions that you would most like to see approved, what would it be?
Oh, certainly I would go for the 4-year terms. I think a couple reasons. One is there's really a huge learning curve, especially for the new members to get on. You really need to go through a couple budgets to get that down. There's a whole lot we do with land use. It's just not an easy job, and a typical council member spending 20, 30 hours a week in addition to their day job or whatever else they're doing. The other thing is when we communicate with our peers or the county council, the county executive, they want to know that if we're going to get in a project with them, that we're going to be around to see it through to the end. And most projects these days, they just don't happen in a year or two. They happen over 3, 4, 5, 10 years. So they want to see that tenure. I think those are the main reasons I would go for 4.
Bridget Newton?
I agree. I would go for 4 years. I wouldn't have said that 4 years ago, and I see some perplexed faces out there because you know me and you know I didn't used to think that. But after serving on the council through 2 terms, and each term seeing somebody start running right away, it destroys the workability of a council. You are constantly up against someone who's got the next step in mind, and rather than building a collegial relationship and really working together on the goals of that council. I think 4 years would give us a lot of security in Rockville. I think people are concerned maybe you would get stuck with somebody, but maybe we'd have better people running because we would have more time to get involved. It does take a while to get to know the budget process. I would say the first year you're pretty much of a newbie, maybe even part of the second. But there are a lot of things that we can do, and if you build the relationship over 4 years, you can have a lot of good things happen in Rockville.
Thank you. Question for Bridget Newton. As has been acknowledged, Rockville did use some economic incentives to help attract choice hotels to headquarter in Rockville. But what about the future? Should such incentives be used, if at all, and in what way going forward?
Good question. Part of my opening statement, I was going to talk about an idea I have about having a small business grant and putting $1.7 million, which is what we gave to choice in incentives, towards bringing small businesses to Rockville. They don't have access to capital markets. They sometimes get harder grilling through the banks than big businesses do, and they employ more people than big businesses on a, whatever that word is, basis, I'm sorry. But that might be where we can really be a help to businesses and do good for Rockville. Rockville's known for our small businesses. In fact, I think Reddy's is known for the businesses we keep. Let's bring good small businesses here. As I talk to people, I hear about a lot of things that we still need to do in Rockville. We still need a hardware store. We still need some other things. Some people would like a bookstore. I would. But let's look at what we can do in incentivizing. Let's work with the state and see if we need to create another enterprise zone where we can get tax incentives and have businesses come for that reason. So I think there's a lot we can do if we work together to do that.
Thank you. Mark Pierzchala?
Yes, on my platform I have a specific plank about incentives, and that is we need to have an incentive policy for Rockville. We don't have one at the moment, but we need to, before giving out any more incentives, we need to have policy goals in mind for the city. What kind of goals would we give incentives for? For example, the choice hotels, which was an incredibly modest incentive by the city of Rockville and is going to pay off big time. That had the effect of boosting our town center, especially our retailers. It kick-started the private development around the town square. It certainly allowed the Duval project to go forward. But in the incentive policy, we have to have not only the policy, not only the reasons set out ahead of time to do an incentive, but we have to have the measurements. We gave the incentive, for example, we've only done it 4 times in 4 years. Now what is the payback? Or did we get the payback that we expected? If not, then we need to revise the policy again.
Thank you. Question for Mark Pierzchala. What can we expect to learn and see about your leadership during your first 60 days as mayor?
Sure. My first 60 days, well, we will certainly convene in open session, on camera, the work sessions that are necessary to formulate the mayor and council vision. Now there's a couple aspects of that. Part of that goes into the budget book, and that's what the budget book requires in order to get its reward, but also it's the plan. Now I have put on my website my plan, what I think ought to be done for the city, and mayor council can talk about that and revise it if they want. But certainly there's the communication not only within the mayor and the council, not only between the elected and the city staff, but then there's the communication with the community itself. So I have committed to visit every homeowner and citizen association within a year. I've committed to meet with the business people. I've committed to meet with the nonprofits. I've committed to meet with residents at their pleasure. So I think there's a whole lot more that the mayor does and a council member does in terms of opening up the avenues of communication. And certainly I would like to see the Rockville Summit process continue, where we brought together the 5 big sectors of the city: residents, businesses, nonprofit, educational institutions, and government. And all together, that collaboration is what really works. And that was a great group. People had to consider not only their little study topic, but other study topics. They had to consider the various points of view. And I think that's the model that I would use.
Thank you. Bridget Newton.
Well, shortly after we're sworn in, we'll start with a retreat right here in Rockville, open to the public, where we will discuss goals, visions, and what we're going to do for the next 2 years. After that, I think we need to set up a plan for walking town meetings. I have said before I'd like to implement what Rose Krasnow did when she was mayor and hit every neighborhood at least twice during our term as council. Going out into the neighborhood, you meet people and you see what's going on and you see the issues firsthand. As I said before, I'll meet once a week with each council member, and I think we'll have more of a collaborative relationship together. Hopefully, we'll have a liaison into the senior staff meetings on Tuesday morning, and the city manager and I would work closely together on making sure that the senior staff and the council are working together on getting things done before the meetings on Monday night. So I look forward to lots of opportunities, and I think there are ways we can all come together.
Bridget Newton, can you identify for us a recent development in Rockville, Gaithersburg, or Montgomery County that best matches your vision of model development?
Well, I love King Farm. I love the fact that they have all different types of housing. I like the green space, the walkability, the shopping. If it was a business, a company model, I love Folger Pratt. I think the building that they just built at the corner of Middle Lane and 355 sets the bar very high for Rockville. I hope if you haven't seen it, you'll go in and see it. Choice Hotels built out, and the two combined together, work together to make a company that is open, it's energized, they have whiteboards. You are very valued as an employee in that company, and it shows. And I think that's what we want to be in Rockville. We want to value our employees, we want to value our residents. Let's make sure every development is the best it can be.
Mark Pierzchala.
Well, a number come to mind. I think our town square development was a very good development that is still continuing in the sense that things need to come around it to make it a viable development overall. I also would have mentioned King Farm and Falls Grove, but I would go further back in time and mention, for example, Newmark Commons, which I think is an incredibly beautiful community around the artificial lake and the different styles of housing. And that one's, you know, it's got some decades on it now, but I think it's withstood the test of time.
Thank you. Question for Mark Pierzchala. What relationship will you hope to maintain with the city's appointed officials, such as the city manager, the city clerk, and the city attorney?
Right. I think I have, in fact, I do have right now excellent relationships with all three individuals. And I think the thing to keep in mind with those three, they're all relatively new. And they are now have all done at least 1 year or more, and they're just getting going, and I think that it's a great group. But certainly, just to give you an example of what I do now, I talk regularly with the city manager. I make sure that I'm in touch with the city attorney as we need to be in touch. We explore all sorts of things. For example, we're having these debates. What can I say about some of our legal issues if they come up? So I take that on. The city clerk, I meet with him when we need to meet, but he's doing such a great job, I don't need to meet with him all the time. But I think it's just, you know, no surprises either way. Here's what I'm going to propose as a mayor. Just want to let you know ahead of time. Something big coming down in the city. You know, we should know about it sooner rather than later so that we're not all of a sudden reading something in the paper. I think that kind of communication, keeping each other abreast of what's coming on so that we can anticipate both from their side and from our side what's coming up, and then we can make sure the communication is okay on it.
Thank you. Bridget Newton.
Thank you. As a council member, I have been very involved working with and meeting with the city manager, attorney, and clerk. And I would think that as mayor, I would be even more so. Currently, I visit with them or have lunch or coffee with them at least once every couple weeks. I would expect as a mayor it's far more than that. I'm very fortunate in that I can go into the office on a regular basis, and I'm probably in there 3 or 4 days, maybe an hour, maybe a couple hours. And as a mayor, I would expect to be in there every day for a couple hours. I think that my relationship with our appointees is a more friendly relationship. It's not as a boss, because I am there a lot and we talk a lot, so that if something comes up, they can just say in passing, hey, you need to know about this, or what do you think about that? I feel very comfortable calling them on the phone if there's something that I can't get into to talk with them about or sit down with. So I look forward to those relationships. We have great employees, and they've done a wonderful job for us.
Bridget Newton, what, if any, changes to the city's adequate public facilities ordinance would you support?
Well, if you watched the meeting Monday night, you know that I, along with the other council members, voted to move along the suggestions that came from Councilmember Moore and Hall and have an open public debate for the next 2 weeks with any potential happening not until the 28th of October. I will not approve passing waivers in this term. Needs a lot more discussion, if ever, that when we would have waivers. We need to protect the adequate infrastructure in our city. We need to protect the schools in our city. We need to make sure we provide for safe and adequate classrooms. And I will work very hard to ensure that we get school number 5 built and the monies for renovations to Twinbrook and expansion of Julius West. But until we do that, the adequate public facilities under my watch will stay set.
Mark Pierzchala.
Yes, what's coming up on October 28th are a series of relatively modest improvements, clarification of language. If a school is going to be built in a city, it shouldn't trip over the APFO itself, for example, because of traffic, things like that. And I fully support those. I support one waiver right now, and that is a waiver for our town center performance district, because we have $40 to $50 or more million invested in Town Square, and we need to protect that investment. Right now, the Phase 2 north of Bell Avenue, it can only develop in very limited ways because the APFO is getting in the way, including Councilmember Newton would like to have it develop even more robustly than now, but that can't happen with the APFO. So I support that waiver. I think we need to look at our, especially for the schools, the 110% capacity limit. It should be aligned with the county. It has no beneficial effect to Rockville, and it has some harmful effect. It's the county that provides the schools, and we are on the county schedule for schools, not Rockville's. Thank you.
We have time for one more question, and this would be for Mark Pierzchala. What role do you see for Rockville Economic Development Incorporated, or READY, and the Rockville Chamber of Commerce in business retention and attracting new businesses?
Certainly. You have to remember these are two differently funded groups that do already cooperate considerably, but they have different purposes. The READY board, which I am on as a council member, that READY is funded by the city, and its job is to retain businesses, to help start businesses, and to attract businesses. There's big three things. And so it really has the outreach, going after businesses, monitoring websites, attending conferences, answering questions. We get questions from all over the world, hosting visits, that sort of thing, helping businesses that come in work with the city. The Chamber of Commerce is a membership organization. As I said, I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce. And the Chamber of Commerce, to me, its role is to facilitate the existing businesses, to get these business owners to know each other, to provide some training that perhaps READY would not provide. The roundtable conferences, I think, are very good. The Chamber has come along so well in the last 3 to 4 years. I'm really proud of how it's revived itself. And I think keeping in mind these are complementary kinds of things that READY and the Chamber do, I think they've got it just about right, and I'd like to see that continue.
Thank you. One more. Mark Pierzchala, recently the city outsourced the operation of Redgate Golf Course. Do you think that other city services should be considered for outsourcing?
Yes,
and if so, which ones?
Right. I'll say that I led the charge to get Redgate outsourced, and that was an obvious one. The others are not so obvious. We can have, for example, you can imagine things like inspections and review processes could be outsourced. There's a few others, but we have about as many employees in the city now as we had 10 years ago, and the city is about 30% bigger. And we've done an awful lot to outsource where necessary and to keep in-house where necessary. And all that has gone over inspection over the last 10 years. So I think we're probably about where we need to be on that.
Bridget Newton.
Thank you. I want to say two things because I missed the last answer. The first one is my opponent didn't propose outsourcing Redgate. He actually wanted to get rid of it. And once he couldn't get rid of it, he wanted to turn it back to nature, not realizing that there's a cost incurred by the city to do that as well. I held on to Redgate as long as I could in order to assure that we didn't lose a large 40-acre green spot in Rockville, paid for by city monies, and a gem. It's considered a gem in Rockville. I also was very concerned about the 10 employees that we had, long-time employees, over 30 years, and I didn't want to see them with 2 weeks' notice lose their job. So I fought very hard to get the best deal that we could for Redgate. Now, back to the first question, which I've forgotten, if you could remind me. Chamber and READY, thank you. I think the Chamber and READY are the economic arm of the city. And as long as we're working with them and they're helping the city from the council side of things, we're a team. And I've been very, very pleased with the Women's Business Center, with all the things that have been done. And I too give a shout out to Andrea Jolly, because I think that she has re-energized and reinvigorated the Chamber, and it's really doing good things and bringing more Rockville businesses in, and that's a great thing to see. But Rockville is about everybody, and Mr. Romer, as you started off, Rockville is such a great place for everybody. And if we don't have great businesses, we won't have great neighborhoods. If you don't have great neighborhoods, you won't have good businesses. So we have got to remember that it takes all of us to make a great city, and we are well on our way to being the best city in the world. Thanks.
That's all the time we have for questions. Now we're going to hear some closing statements from the candidates. Mark Pierzchala, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I am a supporter of business, and I am a businessman, but I am a supporter of business in the context of the city of Rockville. I want business to prosper. I think a lot of people in Rockville assume a prosperity is always going to be there. And you know what happened to the federal government recently. We had the shutdown, we've had the sequester, we have the debt limit. Every 4 months or 6 months there's another crisis. And we really have a great deal of economic uncertainty in this city. And so one of the reasons I am in office and running for mayor is to handle that economic uncertainty, and I would like to see private business be a bigger part of the overall economy of Rockville and also of Montgomery County. I think we'll be lucky if the federal government shrinks slowly, and we can handle that. But we have to honor business. We have to give the business its proper place. Now, if we see a North Carolina style taking down of government function, it'll be, there won't be a whole lot we can do other than just cope with it. But I think that's not going to happen. I think we will see a shrinking of the federal government. Its debt is so high. But I think business needs not an honored place at the table. They need a fair place at the table. They need some sort of consistency and predictability. And business people, they know how to adapt to an environment, and we'll have the environment we need to have in Rockville, but they should know what they're getting into when they're coming in for a permit. They should know what they're getting into when they come in for inspections. They should know they should have a mayor and council on their side for revision of the sign ordinance, for example. The forestry ordinance could be looked at, and some other ordinances that seem to have good intent, but just to be too much. So I appreciate your support for Mark Pierzchala for mayor. My website is votepierzchala.org. I have a full 12-page platform up there, as well as some other information. You would know where I stand. Thank you very much.
Bridget Newton.
Thank you. The city of Rockville is probably as close to a hometown as I will ever come. I've lived here 32 years, longer than I've lived anywhere else in more than half my lifetime. I've played an active role in Rockville because I believe that only by being involved can you make something better. I participated in the first summit called Imagine Rockville, and a lot of very great ideas came from that series of meetings. We have the Rockville today because of the synergy created then. I got involved in the second summit because I saw the need for to change it from a business and economic summit to a Rockville summit, and we changed it from a weekday to a Saturday. I think everyone agrees that those changes allowed more participation and buy-in on the part of our community. As a founding member of TCAT, not only was I the chair, but I was active for 15 years, instrumental in working together with business owners, store managers, citizens, developers, and Rockville staff to create a vision for Rockville's town center. We wouldn't have the regional library in town center if I hadn't set up and led the meeting with then County Executive Duncan, which led to my being put on the site selection committee and then the library being set in the town center and not on Route 28. We have a grocery in town center because I urged the mayor to call Don Riggs, and we met and we said, what's going on? We acted and changes were made. After years of pledging, 2 years after pledging I would get a grocery, Dawson's Market moved in. My opponent might have been the chair of the Business and Finance Task Force, but I envisioned, presented, and fought for a Budget and Finance Commission. Finally, after almost 4 years, and over his strong objections until the night of the vote, we finally have a financial advisory board, and there are 2 Rockville business owners serving on that body. It takes a vision to get things done, and I have shown that I have that vision. I have shown that I can implement, and I have shown that I do it together with all stakeholders. Thank you.
On behalf of the Rockville Chamber of Commerce, thank you both for your thoughtful comments. Let's have a round of applause. Thanks also to our audience and our viewers. Please remember to vote on November